In this nugget, we'll talk about principles of assessment, motivations for multilingual assessment.
Molo, non voglio sia.
Hi there, you look beautiful.
Sani bonane noke, li siti bele.
Goeiedag, hoe gaan dit?
It is increasingly difficult to find classrooms today where you don't have students from different cultural or linguistic backgrounds. In other words, students who themselves or whose families were not born into the culture or language that is dominant in their schools. In some environments at least, there is increasing recognition that teaching and learning somehow need to find ways to respond to this diversity of languages and cultures in the classroom. However, until recently, assessment was not really seen as a pedagogical practice that needed to incorporate multilingual and even multicultural dimensions. The question is, how does one convince policymakers and teachers that multilingual assessment is also important given our increasingly linguistic diverse classrooms? We can turn to principles of assessment to find motivations for multilingual assessment in linguistically diverse classrooms. We will look at a few principles of assessment, namely validity, authenticity, reliability, washback, and practicality. Validity. The question we ask ourselves here: is the assessment measuring only what it is supposed to be measuring, or is it measuring something else completely different, or a combination of something relevant and something not relevant? Authenticity. The key question underlying this principle may be stated as follows: does the task reflect real-world concerns or situations, and is it relevant to the learner? Reliability. This principle looks at whether the test is consistent and dependable. There are three forms of reliability, namely student-related reliability, test administration reliability, and test reliability. The most common form of reliability is student-related reliability, which refers to various factors that can affect a student's state of mind before doing an assessment, which may result in inaccurate test scores, thus not reflecting a student's true capabilities. Washback. Washback refers to the feedback that a student should receive from the teacher or assessor after an assessment has been completed. Practicality. This principle looks at a number of factors. Is the assessment considered practical in the following ways? Is the test expensive? Is an appropriate time frame given to complete the test? Is the test administered relatively easy by administrators or teachers? And is the grading specific and time efficient? Construct validity is one type of validity and asks the question: does this test actually tap into the theoretical construct as it has been defined? In mathematics, addition is a construct, and in this task shown, how many mice are there is the question. It is possible that for some students it is not only the construct of addition that is being assessed, it is possible that the construct of English plurals is also being assessed. If a student answers, "There are 3 mice," just because the student did not know that the plural of mouse is mice, can we really say that in terms of construct that the assessment is valid? No. Perhaps, if the student were given the option of an isiXhosa version of the task, here the isiXhosa version appears beneath the English one, the issue of English plural would not arise and the focus would be on the intended construct of addition. Therefore, this example shows the need to adhere to the assessment principle of validity. In this case, construct validity justifies multilingual assessment. An assessment is authentic if what it asks the students to do looks like a task in the real world. We can also say that ideally, the language in which students demonstrate their knowledge should look like the language which the students will use professionally in their community. This means that there is also a language dimension to authenticity. We can say that if nurses and other healthcare professionals are assessed only in English and answer only in English, but the communities they will serve after they graduate mainly speaks Afrikaans or isiXhosa, then the linguistic authenticity of the assessment is perhaps questionable. Allowing these students to demonstrate their knowledge in assessment situations in the languages of the communities where a majority of them will work is therefore important. Authenticity as a principle of assessment can also be used to justify multilingual assessment. As would be recalled, the principle of reliability has to do with the way we design assessments so as to remove factors that lead to a lack of consistency and that make the results inaccurate. These factors have to do, for example, with the student or the teacher rating the assessment, which could lead to results that are not consistent. A student who is going in to write a high-stakes assessment may be anxious because of the language of the assessment, apart from the many other reasons why students are anxious. Anxiety related to language of assessment can become a reason why the student's performance may not reflect their true knowledge and be consistent from language setting to another. Therefore, giving students multilingual assessment can contribute to students' results being fairly consistent because language anxiety, which can negatively impact consistency, is no longer a major concern. We can therefore say that the principle of reliability, specifically student-rated reliability, justifies multilingual assessment. As may be recalled, the principle of washback in assessment requires an assessment to have positive influence on learning and teaching and to have a positive impact on the students by helping them to learn better. Another way of saying this is that assessment should support learning. One important way assessment has such positive influence on learning is through the feedback given by the teacher, and we know that a written rubric is a means through which teachers may give feedback. Now, if it is agreed that there are students in our linguistically diverse classrooms who may be better served by the inclusion of their home languages in teaching and learning, then washback that is multilingual becomes important. You may find the nugget on how the parts of an assessment, including rubrics, provide opportunities for incorporating multilingualism. In summary, the principle of washback or the need for feedback on assessment to support students' learning provides another motivation for multilingual assessment. The principle of practicality, as may be recalled, has to do with whether the effort, time, and or cost of an assessment is realistic. What is the time, effort, and/or cost of developing, administering, and grading of an assessment? Practicality is the one principle which many people use to argue against multilingual assessment. Some educational language policies even say multilingual assessment may be offered if practicable. There are concerns around the practicality of multilingual assessment, and they include questions such as the following. And in some environments, these are very valid concerns. Where there is a will, there is a way. Multilingual question databanks can be built over time by senior students, tutors, assistants, and so forth. Translation technologies can be deployed to reduce costs of producing different language versions of questions. Multilingual multiple choice questions administered electronically can have answers programmed so grading is automated. Lastly, remember, an assessment can be multilingual because only one of its parts is multilingual.
Created using Powtoon.